What if I ask AI to plan my next conference trip? Could it actually find a better flight than me? Finding the best flight is sometimes the most annoying part of traveling to a conference. When it comes to deciding what's the best flight for my trip, I go with the convenience factor, which is a combination of several factors, for example, the price, the arrival time, the number of stops, the layover quality, and eventually I do the search manually. But today I want to test whether AI, especially the agent mode, can do this better than me. My name is Dr. Mim Rahimi and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Houston. On this channel, I run experiments to explore questions that I'm personally curious about at the intersection of AI and academic life. The question for this video is very simple. Can I rely on AI to find flights for my next trip? Let's talk about how I choose a flight. A good flight for me is a convenient one. So the global metric that I use is convenience. And when it comes to convenience, it could be many factors. Obviously, one of them is price, which is a major factor. Lower is the better. The other one is the number of stops. I try to avoid more than 2 stops, which is also a major factor. The third one is the layover. So I want a high quality layover. That means it has to be minimum of 1 hour for domestic flight and max of 6 hours. So I make sure that I can catch the next flight. At the same time, I don't want to stay in the airport for more than 6 hours. And also, I prefer not to change the airport, so that'd be a little bit inconvenient. The next one is the alliance. This is sort of a moderate factor. That means it has a moderate impact on my decision. Since I'm using United most of the time, and Houston is a big hub for United, I prefer to stay with Star Alliance, which United is a part of. So that's sometimes a consideration, but it's on the moderate side. And the last one is the arrival time. This is sort of a minor consideration. So I avoid arriving between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. in my destination. Sometimes it would be logistically hard to get into the hotel, for example, and sometimes the safety concerns. But this is more on the minor side. Collectively, all of them together, I describe them as the convenience factor. So this is what goes into my mind when I look at a flight to evaluate whether this is a good one or not. So the first experiment I designed is just a basic itinerary, going sort of a round trip, going from city A to city B. And for this specific example, I'm using the flight going from Houston, Texas to Honolulu in Hawaii. The reason I'm using this specific route is that I'm actually going to a conference in Honolulu, and that'd be Pacific Chem 2025. So I'm actually looking for a flight for this specific date and this specific route. Experiment 2 is a little bit more involved. It's a multi-city kind of itinerary. That means I'm not going from one city and returning to the same city, but rather it's basically a multi-city kind of trip. So first I'm going from Chicago to Atlanta, and then from there to Dallas, and then back to Chicago. So this would be sort of from the itinerary point of view, this is a multi-city kind of planning. And specifically why these 3 cities? I intentionally picked them because Chicago is one of the biggest hubs for United. Atlanta is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, for Delta, and Dallas for American Airlines. So that means we have so many options going between these cities, and we have to deal with at least the 3 major airlines that are basically located in this specific city. So it makes it more involved in terms of the diversity of the flights that we can find. So I thought maybe this could be more challenging compared to going from, let's say, a United hub to another United hub. We're going to use ChatGPT on 3 different modes. The first one is the thinking mode, which is basically relying on ChatGPT 5.1 thinking and extended thinking mode. The second one is agent mode on ChatGPT platform. And the third one is the agent mode on Atlas browser, which is basically the OpenAI's recently released browser. The difference between the normal agent mode, and the agent mode on Atlas is basically the normal one uses the ChatGPT platform itself. But the one on browser, we're basically dictating the actual web page that it has to use for this specific task. And the result for the two experiments will be compared across the three different modes. So the prompt for the basic itinerary is something like,
"You are my travel assistant, and your job is to find the best possible flights for the following itinerary based on overall convenience. Departing date, December 15th from Houston to Honolulu. Returning date, December 21st from Honolulu to Houston. Please search for flights and give me the top 3 options that best match the criteria below. When evaluating each option, use a weighted convenience score out of 10. A higher score means a more convenient overall itinerary. Here are the criteria I care about: price, number of stops, layover quality, airline alliance preference, arrival and departure times."
Starting with the thinking mode, I'm putting on the extended thinking mode, copying paste the prompt, and then basically let it run. And it's obviously thinking based on all the information that we provided. Searching for the flight, and then searching some of the website, but we don't have any control of what website it's searching. And then it's basically trying to get the flight information and also flight cost. And it took roughly 5 minutes and 34 seconds, but it gives us all the options, the 3 options, and all the information we ask for, the weight, the information about the flight itself, and also the cost. Moving on to the second mode, the agent mode, I have to activate the agent mode and make sure the web search is also activated. Copy and paste the basic prompt and then let it run, starting with thinking, obviously, and then trying to set up the desktop. Again, we don't have any control on what website it's searching on, but I would be curious to see that. So starting with Google Flight, actually, so which the platform that I would use, and trying to add all the information. But again, the point is here, I'm not signed in on Google Flight. So it's basically using its own desktop with its own credential. And I'm not sure how much it goes back and forth. Oh, it seems it finished. So it worked for like 4 minutes roughly, and then it provided all the information. Since this is a basic task, I'm not surprised that it doesn't take much time, and providing the options sort of very quickly. Moving on with the agent on Atlas browser, I'm on Google Flight right now. I make sure to turn on the agent mode, copy and paste the prompt itself, and also I'm sure I'm logged in. So this logged in is activated, and so it's basically approaching this as me logged in, basically simulating what I would do with all the access that I have when I'm logged in for Google Flight. So it's doing basically all the fun work, searching, checking all the flights, and simulating what I would do probably. And here it's pretty interesting. It's basically coding, doing a little bit of tiny Python code. I think it's adding weight to calculate the convenience metric. And eventually after 4 minutes, providing all the options. Again, considering this is a basic task, I'm not surprised that it doesn't take much time. Now let's look at the result of the basic itinerary, the round trip one, basically going from Houston, Texas to Honolulu in Hawaii. I did this manually, like what I do all the time, basically, considering the convenience factor, which is a combination of all the factors we talked about. And it took roughly 15 minutes for me to come up with my decision, which was basically a round trip using United Airlines, going from Houston directly to Honolulu, and then coming back again, a direct flight using United. So this checks so many of those boxes that I mentioned, and eventually this is a convenient flight for me. So I give this task to the 3 modes we define. And on the thinking mode, it took roughly 6 minutes. And the same flight, the same round trip flight was the first option. Again, I'm not very surprised because this is a relatively straightforward itinerary going from like a big United hub to Honolulu and coming back. And the score for this flight was 9.2. And the next two options were like 8.3 and 7.6. So this was like a clear option for the thinking mode. For the agent mode, it took roughly 4 minutes. And this was, again, option 1 with the score of 9. And on the agent mode, using Atlas browser, this was also the first option with the score of 9. And it took roughly 4 minutes. So overall, they did a pretty good job in terms of finding the flight. It was faster than what I would do normally. Mine was 15 minutes, but for them it was like around 5 minutes in average. And all of them came up with the same sort of best itinerary, considering the convenient factor. So the prompt for the multi-city itinerary was a little bit more involved. Obviously, we had to provide more information, and it goes like,
You are my travel assistant, and your job is to find the best possible flights for the following itinerary based on overall convenience. Itinerary, multi-city. January 7th, 2026, Chicago to Atlanta. January 11th, 2026, Atlanta to Dallas. January 14th, 2026, Dallas to Chicago. Please search for flights and give me the top 3 options that best match the criteria below. When evaluating each option, use a weighted convenience score out of 10.
Okay, moving on with the second task, multi-city kind of itinerary. You can see all the modes, the different modes are working at the same time. Thinking mode, just thinking, relying on the data source and the database that it has, also searching the web on the platform that it decides. And for the agent mode, this time I think it's working on Expedia. Last time it was on Google Flight. So this why it decided to go with Expedia, for example. And it's relying on its own desktop. On agent on Atlas, unlike the agent mode, the regular agent mode is basically using the Atlas browser, me logged in for Google Flight, and it's specifically working on the website that I indicated, which is Google Flight, what I would use all the time. And after some time, it's basically providing all the information about the flight, the cost, and all the key information that we actually requested. It took me 35 minutes to find the best 2 options that I could consider for my flight. And these options are basically considering all the factors, but sometimes I have to acknowledge I might forget a factor that I was considering. For example, here in option 2, I have a change in the airport, which I normally don't consider. So this is something that was sort of a mistake that I made. But still, option 1 was very convenient, using United Airlines for the first leg, then the second leg using Delta, leveraging on Delta hub in Atlanta, and then using United to go back to Chicago. Now, looking at the different modes, the thinking mode took roughly 4 minutes, and it came up with an interesting option. It was the first flight was slightly different than what I picked. Mine was leaving at 9 a.m. This one was leaving at 10:35. So not bad. Like, I would say this is reasonable, non-stop using United. But then the second flight was pretty interesting. So it leveraged on the fact that we're traveling to Dallas. So this is a big American airline hub, and then it picked the American airline option. And the last flight was also slightly different than what I picked, but still United non-stop, a good flight. So this was interesting because it picked something that was, I think, better than my option 2, but probably I still prefer option 1 that I decided. And for the second option from the thinking mode, which it called the cheapest option, it leveraged on the budget airlines. So going from using Frontier, for example, a little bit changing the airline, and also using American Airlines for the last flight. Not something that I would pick. It doesn't check many of the boxes. so I wouldn't consider this to be a convenient flight. So overall, I would give this a thumbs up and probably not the best second choice. So moving on to the agent mode, it took 25 minutes, so it was just going a lot of back and forth. And what it picked was, the first one was, it was called All United, putting a lot of weight on the fact that I really want to fly with the Star Alliance. And this was just a moderate option. This was not a big factor, a major factor. But then when you look at it, it's basically the first flight and the last flight are pretty convenient, I would say, but the second flight it has one stop. And obviously this is not better than what I picked. So I would prefer to go with my option 1 rather than this one. And the second one is relying all on the Southwest option, sort of leaning towards the budget option. And I wouldn't consider this to be a good option because they have better options. And if I want to stick to Southwest, I would actually pick my option 2 because it has at least 2 Star Alliance. So overall, sort of a no for the agent mode, which I was actually surprised. I was expecting this to at least pick one good option. So moving on to the agent on Atlas, this took 13 minutes, pretty reasonable. And this was obviously using Google Flight. And the first option, which was called United Oriented, surprisingly, this was the same exact option for all the 3 legs that I picked. So this was 9 a.m. non-stop United, and then 8:30 p.m. Delta non-stop, and then the last one, 1:18 p.m. non-stop United. So this was exactly the same as my first choice, which was great to see it. But then the second option was, again, all non-stop, but it tidal, but obviously the first one was also all non-stop, but this was using all Southwest. So for this agent on Atlas, I would give a big thumbs up for the first one, because obviously this was also my first choice after 35 minutes of research. And then the second one, probably not. So to put all the experiments together, I used the convenience factor, which was a combination of so many factors with different weights, which normally I would consider when I'm deciding a flight to go to a conference. This might be slightly different when I'm going for a vacation. So this is specifically fine-tuned towards a trip to a conference. The thinking mode, the agent mode, and the agent on Atlas, for the basic round trip, they were all perfect. They picked the same option as I picked, so I'm no surprise there. This was a relatively straightforward task, but very representative of so many of the flights that I take to go to a conference. For the advanced task, which was multi-city, thinking mode, I'm still undecided. I would say I need to do more to see what's the capability of this. The flight that it picked was very interesting. I think it could beat my second option, but not necessarily the first option. So I would be still hesitating to give it either bad or good rating. So for now, that be neutral. For agent mode, I was expecting more. So what it picked was neither of the options were good. So I would just not consider a good performance for multi-city. Agent mode was excellent. It picked actually the same exact flight, considering all the variation that we could have in terms of the departure time, the arrival time. It actually picked the same as I did. So very reliable in this task. Obviously, we could make this more complicated. For example, give me sort of a 3-day itinerary traveling to this city in Europe or traveling to this specific part of the world. But for this specific task, we just wanted to have sort of a representative of what I normally do, like sort of a round trip, going to a conference, or sometimes going to give a seminar, sort of a multi-city kind of approach. So to answer the key question of the video, can I rely on AI to find flights for my next trip? I would say yes. I'd be comfortable to ask AI specifically on the platform that I use, which is Google Flight, using Atlas browser with access to agent mode of ChatGPT. I can ask comfortably for providing some options for the flight, and then I can manually check those options. And if those make sense, if those are convenient, then I go with that. So the answer is yes.